Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Let me share my screen here. All right. As you join the meeting, if you could please add your name to the list of attendees, that would be great. This morning, we're going to start out by a demo from Ivan.
Yeah, so can I start?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, let me share my screen. So,
yeah, the same question to Elsa. I don't know.
Can you see my screen?
Okay.
Yes.
We can see.
Okay, so what I'm going to tell about is a local cluster tool I developed. There's a proposal in Kubernetes community repository for a new version of this tool. I'm going to rewrite it in Go. Actually, as of now, it's mostly comprised of shell scripts. So basically, what's the problem that it solves? So, for instance, there's two most commonly used local cluster tools. Of course, there's much more, but I'll just name these two, for example, namely local app cluster and Minikube. But there are numerous problems with it. For example, if you want to build local binaries for Minikube, it's actually a rather complicated process. I mean, if you want to make a change in Kubernetes itself and see it work, it's rather hard to do. Another problem is that both a local cluster and Minikube are single node clusters, which limits possibilities of both applications and say end-to-end tests that you can run here. So I'll just start demonstrating the tool, and it takes some time to run, so I'll have time to explain other possibilities. So basically here is just a single shell script that can be used to stand up the cluster. Sorry. Now I'm starting the cluster from scratch. It will take about 2 minutes for it to start for the first time, and after it restarts, after it initially starts, it takes about 30 or 40 seconds to restart it. And here we are starting it from pre-built images, so it's just Kubernetes 1.6. It can be used for, say, working on some Kubernetes related applications that require Kubernetes. So while it starts, what are other problems that it solves? So for instance, Kubernetes is rather big, so it takes quite some time to build. And if you have not so powerful laptop, it may take ages to build and start the cluster. And if you use remote Docker engine, you can, for instance, use it to start to build your Kubernetes source, but not run your test clusters. So another problem is also Mac support. For instance, local cluster here running here. Another problems with existing local cluster implementations is support for different CNI implementations. So you may want to have some kind of realistic cluster with, say, Flannel or Calico, and this can be actually a problem. with DIND, you can choose CNI implementation. I will not do this during this demo because of time limits, but generally it's possible. Another thing to consider is CNI, different CNI implementations. CI environments, I mean, I'm repeating myself. So, I mean, if you say running tests on Travis and your project depends on Kubernetes, and if you use local cluster, you will have to build Kubernetes from source. And here you can use pre-built images. And Minikube, well, it's hard to use VM inside VM. So here we have the cluster up and running. Here you can see it. It took some time to start, but if we will restart it now, it will be much faster. So basically, during your workflow, you start cluster runs, and then it can be restarted much quicker. Because it takes snapshot of the cluster, so in about slightly more than half a minute, you will have cluster running again. And here I will demonstrate another interesting trait, I mean possibility of running end-to-end tests. Here I have slightly broken Kubernetes, checked out, cloned from Kubernetes master. You see I've introduced a break and change, and now I will try to run end-to-end test. Here, for the sake of brevity, I already started the cluster, and I will just show how to restart it. It's done with the same command as initial startup. Just takes less time. So here I'm starting end-to-end test that will spot the mistake. While it starts, let's take a look back here. So here you see it's already restarted. Forgot to add the time comment, but I think it was hardly more than 40 seconds. While it thinks, I mean, running this test, it maybe take a couple of minutes more for this test to complete. I'll just show other possibilities and features of this. This, for example, is CI. I mean, the DIND cluster has its own CI, and it runs here with different CNI implementations. Unfortunately, there are rough edges, and some tests flake sometimes. But basically, here you see this exercises different Kubernetes versions and building stable and master Kubernetes from source. For master, of course, I have to fix it from time to time. Another thing where you can use this project is, for instance, you are writing some Kubernetes extension. There's an example of one. It's a Vertlet project I'm working in Mirantis. It's a CRI implementation for running VMs. And you want to give users some means of running a simple demo of your project. But you don't want to ask user to build Kubernetes and so. So thanks to a DIND cluster, we were able to write a simple demo script that uses DIND cluster under the hood. So with just this command, you start Kubernetes, and in it, Vertlet project is deployed, and it works quite well. Well, there are some limitations, but basically you can use it quite easily. So now I should have started this from beginning because it really taken some time. This test actually looks like it takes more time when it breaks. Oh, now it's completing. So now it will indicate a failure, and I'll show how it's fixed. So while it completes, what else I want to say concerning this community proposal that I wrote. So now it failed. Let's fix our Kubernetes. It's kind of simulating the workflow while working, say, on some Kubernetes PR or something. Here I restart the cluster. It will maybe take some minutes to start, but in this mode, JND helps me build Kubernetes from source. And it also works just as well as against local Docker engine as against a remote one. So you can, for instance, start a GCE instance as helper script for it and use it for building Kubernetes and so on. In this case, I'm running it against local Docker because it's slightly faster this way, but well, it also works just fine on Mac Docker, but my Mac is not very powerful, so it would take even longer if I was running it here. So concerning this community proposal, what else? What I'm going to do is, besides go rewrite, I'm going to make some clean configuration for the cluster. And this is not mentioned in proposal yet, but also there's possibility of introducing multiple backends later. So Docker and Docker may not be the other possibility. For instance, it's possible to add the local app cluster like single node operation mode. Now for now it's just taking some time to build a Hypercube, and but after it's built, the cluster restart is also much faster because the scripts are made this way that just the binaries are replaced in the snapshot, and snapshot is reused. So most of the time during cluster restart, in this case, the most time is taken actually by Kubernetes build at separate contributor experience issue. I think there's something that can be done. Oh, now it's placing binaries. And now it's using these binaries to start the cluster. Actually, so here starts, it's actually a 3-node cluster in this case, 1 master and 2 worker nodes. And actually, if I could specify, for instance, 6 nodes, and it would not take much more time. But with 6 nodes, for instance, you can run all the conformance tests, both serial and non-serial, in under 10 minutes. And they all pass. So now I've restarted the cluster. Sorry that it's taken some time, but here let's restart this end-to-end test and see if it passes now. So unfortunately, by its very nature, the end-to-end test will take some time, but if I am not mistaken, this particular one would not run on a single node cluster because it exercises interpod affinity. So what else can I add it here? Let me see. This community proposal, maybe I missed something important to say while the test completes, and after that I'll finish. So here's actually the proposal. I moved it. It initially was written against, test is finishing now. It was written against KubeADM repository, but now it resides in community. So here it is. It describes a bit different. So now let's see. Here we have success. So basically, we updated Kubernetes and rebuilt it, and now the tests pass, and it's possible. It has much wider use than say local app cluster, and also it handles some cases not handled by Minikube. It's perhaps not cannot replace any of this at least not Minikube. And there are some uses for local app cluster that may not be covered by DIND, but generally I think it may be quite a useful addition. So do you have any questions about it?
Thank you, Ivan. That was a great demo.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Anybody have any questions for Ivan?
Can you actually add a link to the meeting notes to the repository?
Well, I did edit it.
I see it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Ivan. So the next item on our agenda is breaking changes to Kubernetes head. Who would like to address this?
Let's see. Is Anirudh here? Okay. Well, I guess I'll just describe the problem that he faced, and I think a number of people did. I actually had seen the email, so I knew how to point him in the right direction, but I think there was some change to Kubernetes head. So in the main repository, such that it only builds with Go 1.8 instead of 1.7, and a number of people were using 1.7 to build, and I think he just missed the announcement. So it took him more time than it should have to figure out what the problem was, and because he was checking his build configuration. And I think he had some ideas for improving the visibility of this. Maybe an email to Kubernetes dev isn't sufficient. Maybe we need to do Slack or have the SIG leads kind of propagated at community meetings. Whatever it is if you make a change that is no longer backwards compatible to head, meaning all developers will need to change the way that they build, we need to figure out a way to do that. So maybe we move this to the next meeting, and I will ping Anirudh about it.
Okay, I think that sounds like a good plan. New contributor feedback. George?
Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm going to paste the document into chat. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I work with these two Googlers, Lee and Rupert. They are SREs, or not exactly like familiar with how to work with Kubernetes. And I sat down with them for about an hour and a half, and they basically brain dumped, and I wrote it all down. So I posted this to the list, I think, last week at some point. And for a lot of these, I think they're known issues, like as far as things that keep being brought up by people. But I figured it wouldn't hurt. Did anybody see anything here that looked out of place or is a surprise compared to what you've heard? And then I was thinking if someone wants to make actionable items, maybe we can do something about things like Contrib, I think, has been one of those we should get rid of it for a long time kind of things.
Yeah, I think the choices we need to make here are how are we prioritizing the pain points? Who else are we asking for on feedback? Because I know there's also some IBM folks that are trying to help with on new contributor onboarding. And then what are we prioritizing? What are we going to do? And then start making proposals out of it. So feedback on all of this would be awesome.
Sarah, do you have the IBM folks' names, and are they here?
I
Did
do.
they attend these? Oh, you do, George. Okay.
I do, yeah. And they mailed me today about like, how do we triage a bug report? Is there like a page that tells us how to triage bug reports? And the best I was able to do is find some SIGs have like specific steps on how to do it and some don't. So one of them was like, is this something we should all work on together? And I was like, that's a good question I'm going to bring up today.
Oh, hey, Chris. That's awesome. Can we start with the proposal then on how to triage a bug report and what we expect from like individual contributors and what we expect from SIGs? Because I think a number of people, senior people, various SIG leads that I've talked to all have different ideas on what it means to triage a bug. And so maybe we need to discuss what this means. I know there's been a group of us at Google that have looked at the 5,000 issues and just been like, we need to do something about 5,000 plus open issues. Let's try doing it manually and see if we can pick out patterns or find some kind of strategy that we can turn into a longer process. But I think step one is determining what it means to be triaged. And in our reading, the options were every issue should have a SIG label, meaning some SIG should own it. And from there, we need to have expectations that SIGs go through too, because just adding a SIG label to 5,000 issues isn't the right answer either. From there, I think there's a GitHub team called, for each SIG bugs, right? Like SIG network bugs, SIG node bugs. And we can leave it up to the SIGs to come up with some kind of rotation, or we could help them draft a process for that as well. But that, and I think the kind of issue is also important. So there's also kind labels in the repo, and we were trying to add like kind bug and kind feature request or kind enhancement. There are various ones of those. Right now there is automation, very poorly publicized automation that allows people to actually add these labels. So we've talked about it in Contribex, but if you go to Kubernetes and you're on an issue and you type /sig node, it should add the sig node label. So we need to work on publicizing both the mechanism and the policy, and defining the policy. Is anyone interested in doing this, defining the policy for triaging, like what it means for bugs to be triaged? At least taking a first pass, and we can review it at the next SIG meeting, and we can get some feedback from Chris and the other folks at IBM that are working on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure who else was working on that, particularly from the IBM side.
Let me get a list here real quick.
I know in SIG node, or not node network, I've been trying to /r back. We have maybe 214 bugs open, and each day I've been trying to go through, and as well as others in SIG network, go through, mark things that have clearly been fixed as fixed and closing them, or else figuring out if they are going to be available, or if they need to be fixed still, or if it's still relevant, and then commenting on there. After a given amount of time, no feedback, just close the issue. I think maybe in general, like a greater knowledge share needs to happen between what should be contained in the issues. You know, if there's a feature for your SIG that you hope eventually will come to fruition, does it still make sense to have an actual physical issue open for it, or is it something maybe you want to put in like an epic or a roadmap type of thing as a nice to have? Because I can slash these issues down to a more feasible number for the SIG, but they're just going to stack back up with the number of issues that get opened within an automated fashion, and duplicates for people that are still looking for
I
their
think
issue that needs fixed.
I think this is one of the reasons we wanted to find what it means to triage, try to make it in some way helpful and useful for people who might be coming in as new contributors to be able to contribute. Now, they won't always have contacts, but maybe there's a first level triage, second level triage kind of thing, so that if a new contributor wants to come in and try and help triage bugs, they can get, you know, they can find duplicates, they can search, they can scrub, that kind of thing, and then they can say, needs further SIG review or something.
Yeah, and Chris, you hit another couple nails on the head. One was, yeah, a lot of them can just be closed. The Kubernetes repo tends to have people submit support requests as well, and we wanted the intention was for those to go to Stack Overflow. And yeah, so defining the process is going to be key, and then a lot of them not being useful would kind of go towards, I don't know if the template's going to be the answer, but right now it certainly isn't the answer. There is an issue template. Like if you go to Kubernetes and say create a new issue, there's an issue template that everybody just deletes because it's long and it's a pain to read through. But maybe if there were just like 3 questions, or you know, the minimum viable template. MVT.
Right. I was going to say minimum viable bug report or something, but yes.
So can anyone own this?
I can own the template, and then the IBMers I were talking to they gave the impression that for the triaging the bug reports, they'd like to help create like a process. So why don't I like pitch that to them as maybe an initial getting started, and then I'll
Okay.
work.
So I would say owning the template is part of the broader effort, though, because the template is the how. We need to define the what right now. Like, what is it?
I just didn't want to volunteer for the whole thing by myself.
Got it.
So,
This is Jago. I joined recently as an engineering manager at Google, for those of you that don't know me. And I've been working with Garrett on the manual process and trying to identify the trends. I'm happy to jump in and help out, or own if helpful as well.
so do you want me to
Super
stub out like a triage guide, I guess?
I think that would be a reasonable start.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
That's something that anyone within the org could start to do to help triage.
Yeah, because different SIGs have slightly different ones. I figured if we, worst case, genericize that, then that's like one less thing SIGs need to diff from each other on. You know what I mean?
So I'm not even talking about before it gets to the SIG. Right now, there's a number with no SIG labels that aren't even just are in a giant backlog.
Okay.
So at the SIG level, we can work on. I mean,
is it one of those? Hey, SIGs, you figure it out. By the time it gets to your level, we should maybe worry about the big pile.
I think we should worry about the big pile. I think maybe we can have a suggested process for the SIGs. It's going to be hard to standardize. I mean, we can have requirements for all the SIGs, like we need them to be done, but I think if we tell them how to be done, it'll be challenging. I don't know. What do you think, Jago?
I think what we're getting at is that we need some sort of higher level issue life cycle, and like triaged stage 1 is one part, and then SIG triaged is another. And I think what we're getting close to is some rules where the automation can take care of stale issues that don't see action for some amount of time and get kicked back to the filer for more information. And if no information comes in 3 days, then it gets closed, that kind of thing. But you know, the higher issue that I see is that there's a lot of communication on many of these issues, but not a lot of, yes, I have ownership of this and I will close by next Tuesday kind of language. And so I think if we can help out with a general process and issue life cycle, it will go a long way.
And then to my requests for ways to get people onboarding, if that rough level, first level triage could in any way have easy starting points for some of the rinse and repeat grunt work that needs to happen. If it's like, go search for something related and say, I think this is related to this bug without necessarily closing it. Having good entry points is important.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to see where you can jump in and help out right now.
Yep.
Okay, I'll get started on my part then.
Garrett,
Thank you.
were there specific names that you knew of from IBM that wanted to help with this? Was it Doug Davis?
Some people that were working.
Oh yeah, let me paste them into the chat. One sec.
Yeah, I just put that in there because I didn't have the names.
Okay. So I could put myself down as one of the IBMers, but I'm not sure
Thanks,
who
Chris.
else was looking at them.
Okay. And then it looks like the last thing on the agenda, I saw that Garrett had made some progress on a proposal for standardized labels across the repos. And so I was wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at see where that's at right now. Lucas is actually working on it, and I believe he's in the European time zone, so I don't think he's here.
Okay.
But the idea, just to reiterate, is that all repos within the Kubernetes org, and I need to change my definition of all now. I posted a proposal to the Kubernetes dev mailing list, and I got some feedback there. But the idea is that at least some subset of labels should be available in all repos. And the subset is yet to be agreed upon, but we'd like to support some automation so that at some defined interval of time, we just do a sync across all the repos and make sure that at least, let's say, all the SIG labels and all the LGTM labels are there. And I think the tool works. Lucas has done a demo on his own GitHub account. And so I think every repo in his public org has all the Kubernetes labels, which is kind of cool. But it's defining which labels we're going to use. And I think we're going to start with a small group like the SIG labels and maybe the kind labels and possibly LGTM. So we're going to skip out on, I think there are like 60 area labels that may not be useful for, things like Helm or some of the other repos. So right now, I think he's just working with some people that have experience in the test infra repo. It's going to be running in Prow, and he's going to figure out how to run a daily or regularly synced job on Prow, like a cron job.
Great. Thanks for the update, Garrett. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to talk about? George, go for it.
Yep, sorry, I got one last second. This new guy, Jamie, I was kind of like walking through with him. Joe and I decided that we would grab a person and walk him through something. He did this cool thing where he was trying to update a SIG's information, like in the metadata for the docs for the like the list of SIGs page. And then we had this crazy idea of we should just make it all auto-generate so all SIGs are consistent and things like that. And we could just have one YAML file with all the SIG metadata, and then we could generate all the SIG individual pages and the big list of SIGs in a way that people can only update in one spot, and then it would just auto-generate everything. So that got merged, and he announced it a few times, like in dev and everything, but I don't think people were paying attention or responded. So I just kind of wanted to like remind everybody that we have this now.
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time? I apologize.
Oh, okay. All right. So when you go to in the community page, you go to a SIG and it has like a README, and some like they're not the same format. So this guy initially started with like, hey, we should just make a template that's the same for all the SIGs so they all have the same information. And that kind of transformed into let's make a YAML file. Sorry about that. with all the SIG metadata in one file. So anytime any SIG needs to update anything from their video meeting URL, their YouTube archive URL, their Google group URL, all that kind of stuff, they just do it in this one YAML file, and then this generates all the SIG README pages with the same exact template and generates the big list of SIG's README markdown page. So that if you needed to update, the meeting time or whatever for your SIG, you do it in one spot, and then everything magically happens. So he posted to the list, and I thought it was weird that no one really responded. Either people really love that idea, or just aren't paying attention. But I figured it's worth.
Dev or working the Contribex group?
What's that?
Did you post that to Kubernetes Dev or the Contribex group?
It was Contribex. The guy's name is Jamie. About 2 weeks ago.
Okay, I must have just missed that one.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I was like, man, this is pretty cool. Because it was his first thing, and I gave him some ideas, and he actually grabbed every URL for every SIG and put it in a pull request.
George, I'd also share it with the Kubernetes SIG leads group, which basically is a sharing point for SIG leads, and I think putting it in as a notice at the community meeting, and even sharing the Go team. We had a new contributor who was super excited about it, kind of thing, to Kubernetes Dev is a good idea, because I think we need to start more of those rallying points and more of those excitement points, even if it's not super chattery.
Okay, so when we merged him in, we told him post on Kubernetes Dev. I'll follow up with him so he can kind of announce the thing. And then SIG leads.
Kubernetes-SIG-leads, which may be a closed group. I'll have to check that one.
Yeah, if you could.
It should be, it may be that you have to request to access, but anybody should be able to publish to it. So if that's not the case, which I'm checking right now, then I will fix it.
Okay. I will do whatever.
Yeah, one more notice from me, Jorge. So I have noticed, it's really amazing. So we definitely require similar tools for community. At the same time, I noticed that there is only one README with so poor information. I suppose it has to be documented with some more details.
Yeah, so I actually don't know what needs to happen after he commits that, like what runs stuff to generate pages.
Some extended documentation where what should I do to produce this result is very likely, because I see that it's mentioned only what will be generated and how to use with only one command.
Okay. Can you put that feedback in the pull request so I can relay it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that would be great. All right, cool. All right, that's all I had. Sorry to add that at the end.
No worries. Anything else?
I had a note on feature stability. This is probably something that'll cross across to SIG PM, but do we have defined guidance on what it means for a feature to be alpha and or beta and or GA, as in the strict requirements and how one progresses and what can you do and can't you do when matriculating between?
Well, it's also the question for SIG PM, and if you're going to we may discuss that probably at the next SIG PM meeting, or you may type your question into the SIG PM mailing list, and we may discuss it here. If someone has any ideas ready here, please share them. But I would propose to switch its topic to SIG PM.
Sorry, who is that who just asked that question?
This is Chris.
Hey, Chris. I just searched, I think I remember reading it in the Kubernetes docs a while back, at least for the API. That's probably what I'd seen before. On the alpha level, it is something that sits behind a flag, so it's disabled by default. And it's something that you have to actively enable for your cluster. I think that's one of the things, and it's not supported at all. Support for it may be dropped. It may go away as a feature. It's not something that's production ready. I think these are all general guidelines. I don't know if we have a stricter definition on that. And then beta implies that it's a little bit better tested. I think there's some backward compatibility. The overall features like not going to be dropped. I'm just reading from the page at this point and going from memory. But beta is still intended for like giving feedback, whereas at the stable level, it's just like production ready. I don't know. Do you see the link that I sent in? Does that help?
Was that in the
Chat.
oh this thing? Okay, yeah, I'll take a look at this. I bring it up here only because I think it is another potential contributor problem whereby maybe you get so far with something in beta only to note that things that have to be reversed right before it's about to get to GA. I've seen this in a couple of SIGs now where maybe there wasn't proper, and this probably lends to the discussion about how do we announce backwards incompatible changes, but oftentimes something will make it into the release and be right there, and then all of a sudden things start breaking. And I think we saw that in 1.6 quite a lot across multiple SIGs where maybe there was minimal feedback up until the point where something was ready to GA, and then things have to be reverted.
Oh, I see.
All right. If anybody doesn't have anything else, I think we'll wrap up for the day. Nope. Okay. Well, we'll reconvene here a week after next. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.